Hello, welcome to another managerial special from the Honest Football Podcast. I'm Craig Surridge, and with me, as always, is Mr. Daniel Cody. We didn't think we'd be back so soon with these managerial specials. And no, we are not talking about Boris Johnson. We're talking about Huddersfield Town and Carlos Corberan, who's resigned. Corberan has been replaced by Danny Schofield, who was part of the backroom staff at Huddersfield anyway. He's a legend. This came by surprise.
Yeah, I put a bit of a poll out on the social media channels earlier asking which was more of a surprise, this or Neil Critchley, because both of them obviously the shocks of the summer. This one, there's no doubt, has completely caught us by surprise. It seemingly, according to the club statement, has caught the board by surprise because they seem to only become aware of it last night. And it's just a really odd one. I can't quite explain it. The Carlos Corberan statement, which I'm sure we'll get to, doesn't clear anything up because it is the most vague bits of literature I've seen all week, which, given the fact what's been going on in Westminster, is a surprise in itself. But it's just a shame, I think, given what happened last season. He's done a really good job, hasn't he? He settled them down the first season there. They did stay up in the end quite comfortably, then really pushed them on last year. They were disciplined. They were hard to beat. Obviously, I was there at the playoff semi-final where they were incredibly disciplined defensively and resolute. And in the end, they were one goal away from the Premier League. So you can't say that it was a bad season. What we did see, though, like many clubs, I guess, is a slow start to the transfer window. And look, whenever we have these situations, there's one of two causes. One of them is like the Neil Critchley one, there's another job they're ready to go to, or there's been a falling out behind the scenes, or a disagreement on transfer strategy, which is what we saw with Steve Cooper at Swansea at a similar time late in pre-season last year. But with 3 weeks to go to the season, for a side that were the closest of those not to make it to the Premier League last year, it is not going to be helpful whatsoever. The timing is atrocious.
Yeah, I'm just going to get this statement up from Huddersfield Town first. The head of football operations, Lee Bromby, has said it is with great sadness that we have to accept Carlos's resignation. He was obviously a big part of what a fantastic season of 21-22, albeit they obviously lost in the playoff final, but they were up there. They were up there for a reason. And to feel that Carlos can't get any further I think he's underestimating himself.
Yeah, I think that's a disguised reason, isn't it? Let's be honest. I think maybe that could be added to within the circumstances, because it seems clear to me, if he hasn't got a job to go to, that there's been a disagreement over the summer transfer policy, the ambition in recruitment. And if you look at I guess the most similar comparison, ironically, in this one is our club, Luton Town, because we're both clubs that were on slightly smaller budgets last season and both clubs that managed to overachieve in terms of recruitment. The issue comes this summer is you can see that other clubs in that region, the Lutons, the Blackburns, even coming down the likes of Burnley, and that they have started to invest in the squad quite a lot. And they've taken that bit of a gamble to push on to the next level, even if it is a sensible gamble in many cases. Whereas Huddersfield, we haven't quite seen that. There's a lot of players that it looks like they may be losing. And of course, that's always one of the things that can happen after a great season. But I think Carlos Corberan will be frustrated seeing what other teams expected to be in that vicinity are doing and then comparing it to what's happened at Huddersfield this summer. I can understand to an extent the frustration, but equally, it probably could have been discovered a week or two earlier to actually give a new man a full pre-season and a chance to develop, because he's left incredibly big shoes to fill, whichever way you look at it. They've obviously recruited from within, which seems sensible in the sense that they're going to have a bit of stability at the club rather than someone new coming in halfway through pre-season. But I know we'll get onto him. Having an inexperienced man who's managed one game in his place is probably not the ideal solution in the grand scheme of things.
There was obviously rumours that he was linked to another championship club. Obviously, there's no championship vacancies at the moment.
Please don't let there be another one.
Please don't let there be another one. Don't be silly. No, when you read both statements from Carlos and from Huddersfield, and both say, I really appreciate the chairman and I really appreciate what Carlos has done, it doesn't make any sense. Something has had to give for Carlos Corberan to leave Huddersfield, because, as you said, they were one goal away from making the promised land. Why would you leave now? Why couldn't you leave in June or maybe just after the playoff final? But they have signed players. They signed a player for Milton Keynes the day before.
Yeah, it's a really weird situation. I'm sticking with the guys that it's only the level of ambition not being met because, like you say, there can't be anything else to it. I mean, I'm sure tomorrow we'll have egg on our faces when he turns up as the new manager of whatever championship club, but still, I just can't understand the timing of it. And like you, I don't really know how to react because it's just such a surprise. I'm caught off guard. I do feel a bit for the Huddersfield fans because they would never have seen this coming even half a week ago, probably. And with a few weeks to go to the season, I'm sure season ticket sales will have been up this year. I'm sure excitement would have been rife. They're a club that have done so well, got so many good, exciting younger players. And I don't know how to sum it up other than say it's a massive shock to me. And I'm sure it's a massive shock to the Huddersfield fans. And to be honest, it leaves me a little bit worried about them this season. I know we're probably going to have a slight disagreement on that, but I'm really interested to see what happens now under the new man and what happens in recruitment for the last 7 weeks of a pre-season, because at least it's a head coach rather than a manager. They've got footballing people behind the scenes, but 7 weeks to the window shuts. Obviously, there's the break for the Winter World Cup if things aren't going well, which might be a saviour, but I'm not convinced by the instant replacement. And considering they didn't know anything about it till last night, it seems a very knee-jerk reaction to appoint the assistant immediately.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's get on to the new guy. Danny Schofield is now in charge. He was a previous backroom staff under Carlos Corberan. Huddersfield player in the past, so he knows the club inside and out. It is a bit of a risk considering he hasn't had that much managerial experience.
A risk is definitely the right way to put it. I guess, though, in fairness, either way, it's a risk because with Danny Schofield, you're going to get a similar style. You're going to get a man who's not going to change too much, but perhaps will just try and keep things steady for the short to medium term. If you'd brought someone new in, as we mentioned earlier, halfway through pre-season, halfway through recruiting the squad for the new season, that has just as much of a chance of going wrong. And as we've said in the other manager specials, a lot of clubs are going for the younger, unproven head coaches, which maybe does help Danny Schofield here. But equally, the only other options really are those experienced managers that are constantly on the merry-go-round. There's not many great managers about at the moment at championship level. So I can understand the move, but I'm a little surprised they acted so swiftly if they claim to have known nothing about what was going to happen with Corberan. It's definitely a risk. Obviously, he had the one caretaker game, at the end of Project Restart, which was a heavy defeat, but there was nothing riding on it, so probably hard to judge. And he's following up a man who's almost done the unthinkable with them, given the budget. So my issue is that I think even with Corberan in charge, did anyone realistically think they were going to be able to replicate or even better thirds? For Danny Schofield, the only probable destination is downwards. And even if he goes down 3 or 4 places, is that going to be considered a bit of a failure? I don't know. The good thing for the boardroom is that the fans will be right behind him. He's played 250 odd games for the club. He's been in the coaching team for years. He is a club legend, but you've summed it up perfectly. It is a massive risk. And I guess the only positive is that they're not the only club taking a risk on an unproven head coach this year.
No, there's been a few this year, so it makes it very interesting this season. Yeah, Danny obviously will take charge now. No real time frame on his, how long is he going to lead his team? He's got a tough game to start with against relegated Burnley, Vincent Kompany's first game as well. Adds a bit of a twist now to this first game of the season because originally it would have been a very tough start.
It is, but I think the positive to come out of it, obviously it's the first game of the season, Friday night under the lights. And, I don't want to be disrespectful to Danny Schofield, but I can tell you now that Sky Sports will make that the Vincent Kompany show and all of the focus will be on him. All of the attention will be on Burnley. And maybe that just gives him a little chance to go under the radar and not have the limelight on him, which maybe in any other situation, his first game, that would have been the case. So that's perhaps a slight positive. Of course, it's going to be massive what happens in the next few weeks in terms of players. You mentioned one coming in from MK yesterday. Are there going to be any marquee signings or are they going to continue in the vein they did last year? But for Danny Schofield, in terms of how this pans out, it's a very strange statement, isn't it? You mentioned it. We all assume that it's permanent. There's no indicator that there's going to be another manager looked for, but equally, they've not put on this time frame of he's our permanent head coach. That word hasn't been used. So I do wonder if they're just leaving it open enough that if something goes wrong early in the season, we've got that break at the start of November, will we then see someone else come in? I think ultimately it's just about the right decision for now out of the two options that were available. But I know we're going to get to it in a second. I can't see Huddersfield replicating what they did last year. I thought they might be in that mix prior to Corberan leaving, but now, if anything, I'm looking down because we mentioned it in the other ones. There's not many weaker teams in the Championship this year.
No, let's obviously go back to that statement. You lead the first team is different to his permanent head coach or permanent manager. So we'll have to keep an eye on that one. Well, let's get to prediction time. Danny Schofield now in charge first game. How do you see Huddersfield doing?
I'd love to say that it's a match made in heaven and that the club legend is going to lead them brilliantly. The truth is, like so many of these manager specials this summer, we have no idea because Danny Schofield hasn't really got a back catalogue of work that we can assess him on. And the Championship is one of the most brutal leagues in the world, which for 6 or 7 head coaches coming in this summer could either absolutely shine or fall flat on their backsides. My worry with Huddersfield is that expectation has been taken to a new level last year, and one that probably isn't, if we took aside all of the achievements of a coaching team and a tightly knit team, on paper, is probably not a realistic possibility to finish third again. There are big teams coming down that are traditionally yo-yo clubs. There's some big sides investing and some that were awful last year, like West Brom, who you would assume have to improve. I unfortunately see the only way is down. I don't see this lasting long term. I think it might last up to that break for the World Cup, but I think it's just a bit of stability for now. I think he'll try and keep it steady. We won't see too much of a change in style in terms of playing personnel in the starting 11, even if recruits come in. And I think they'll be steady to start the season. My worry is if they're where I expect them to be come October, November, which is sort of top half of the bottom half, are the board then going to panic and think, actually, we want what we had last year. We want to push for the playoffs and go for somebody else. And if that's the case, I could actually see it backfiring. So I think the fans will be behind Schofield. I think they'll be comfortably in mid-table, top half of the bottom half come the Winter World Cup. But whether Schofield lasts beyond that, I'm still not quite sure.
Yeah, I think that's where I'll probably put them in at the moment, probably top 10. A lot of players got released last season. Yeah. And obviously he's only brought in 4 in at the moment for pretty much next to nothing. But they've got I think they've got the fans behind them. Obviously, John Smith's is a very tough place to go to. You've been there twice now. You haven't seen the goal there. So they can't, I don't think they can replicate what happened last season. It wasn't like it was a one-off. It's not like like Luton as well. It's not like these are going to be one-offs. They'll be challenging again. So yeah, I think 10th to 12th is probably, I think will be the right place. I don't think you'll last the season though. I'll be honest.
Well, I was going to just say my only worry is we saw what happened last season with Barnsley after getting into the playoffs, losing their head coach who thought they couldn't take them any further and took another job. And that didn't work out for either party in the end, the head coach or the club. And I just worry for the likes of Huddersfield and Luton, it only takes one change. Like if Luton lost Nathan Jones now, I'd put them in a relegation fight. That's how small a change it can be. So I do hope for Huddersfield that's not the case, but I'm hoping there'll be stability and just a solid season is all they need.
And that's our thoughts on the resignation of Carlos Corberan. Let us know in the comments how you feel about this situation and how you think Danny Schofield will get on in the new job. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the Honest Football Podcast, and you can follow us on Twitter at HonestFootballFree. And hopefully we'll see you at the predictions. No more manager specials, please. See you next time.